Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Human Echoes podcast, the show where we review oddball movies, have oddball discussions, and occasionally take questions from you, the oddball fans.
I'm Tony Southcott.
And I'm Albert Berg, and the oddball movie for this week is a little gem from last year. It's an anthology film called A Christmas Horror Story.
And this one is actually kind of different for a lot of the anthologies we've seen. There's a real through line going through this one.
Yeah, here's one way it's different. It's not terrible.
Yeah. Which VHS and some of the other ones we've watched had their moments, but they were never like just a good overall film.
And this one is, to synopsize, this is a series of, I believe, 5 stories?
It's 4 or 5.
It's 5. And they're all woven together by this one sort of radio DJ played by William Shatner. He's sort of broadcasting out to the town. He gets a little bit of the opening, and kind of jumping in with him and then weaving in through all these stories. We have a really cool ghost story, locked in a school with a ghost story. We have a creepy child who is infested by a demon story. We have a Krampus hunting people down in the snow story. We have Santa versus zombie elves. And what was the fifth one? There's a fifth one.
The fifth one is kind of involving...
That's actually a spoiler, Tony. I'm going to beep that. It'll get beeped. But so all 5 of these things together, this radio host and these various other stories that he's tying together, they are independent stories in a sense. They're all sort of happening independently. They don't affect each other that much, but they do live in each other's worlds very clearly. In one, there's a girl who brings a character to a different story. She brings her a key so she can get into the school. There's a policeman who has a main story, but he's dealing with PTSD from an event that happened at that same school, which we see in a flashback of a video. And it all ties together really, really well. And I saw some people who reviewed this movie, Tony, that did not like the fact that these weren't just set like 1, 2, 3, 4, chunk. Here's our stories and you're done.
Yeah, they just wanted like vignettes thrown out there, kind of like the VHS style where you get the entire story in the middle of everything.
Yeah, and I thought that was absolutely the strength of this movie, because there were a few bits, like for a long time in the movie, the Santa versus the zombie elf story wasn't really working for me. It felt like some of the acting felt a little off, the special effects were kind of gory and over the top, and it felt very silly compared to some of the other like horror elements, but it wasn't, like I didn't have to sit through that whole thing in one sitting. I got to sort of bounce in and out of it and be like, okay, well, we're doing the Santa thing now. It's okay, because I've just come from being freaked out by this ghost, and I'm going to go back to, this guy being chased by his kid in his, house, that he's accidentally brought back a demon from the forest. And that sort of made it better when there were weaknesses in the story, because I could sort of say, well, I'm going to gloss over that and move on to something else.
Yeah, plus you just got to see such a wide variety of different Christmas creatures. Like, you got to see the elves, which didn't work quite as well, but you also got to see the changeling, which may not be quite a Christmas thing. You got to see the Krampus. You got to see so many other awesome things like layered into this, and I just appreciated that it felt like it was 4 ideas that they didn't quite have a full-length movie for, so they just put it all together and made it work. And I haven't seen another anthology that actually did it this well before.
I would argue, too, that there is probably a feature-length film for at least most of these ideas that could be pretty good. Especially the creepy child. I think that was my favorite one, Tony. If we had to pick favorites of the 5 different stories, the creepy child coming home and the way that they shot that, the way they presented him as sort of, built up the idea that there's something wrong with this kid. He's not acting right. How they brought all that together was, I thought, really, really effective. And I like that a lot. I could see that spun out over a longer movie, but it's almost nice that it wasn't, because you do have that variety. You do have that sort of, okay, we have this kind of horror here. That, the ghost story, that wasn't my favorite story, but I thought it had some really cool scares in it. And then you get to do the sort of gore fest thing with the Santa and the zombies, and there's something for everybody. But for me, even the stuff that I wasn't a fan of as much really fit in with the rest in a good way, especially once the movie concluded. Once everything wrapped up, I was super happy with how it all fit together.
Yeah. As far as the creepiest one, I think you're right that it was the Changeling story. Like the kid that they got did an excellent job with that. Like, I think that's another thing. Like, most of these anthologies don't get actors that are all that great. And I didn't really feel like there were any super weak performances, at least not for the title characters.
Well, no, and the elves. I think the elves are a problem because you only have so many actual little people in the world, and if they want to work, they're basically going to work, because if you need short people in your movie, that's what you get.
Yeah,
but,
or you got to go like full Lord of the Rings and have a huge budget and mess with weird angles and do all that.
Correct, and they weren't doing that. These are obviously actual little people, and in that same vein, while the special effects in this are limited, I didn't think any of them were bad special effects. They do a really cool job of bringing all these things to life. The changeling with the weird reflections and the glowing eyes that you would see at times, all of that stuff. It's not anything that you've never seen before in a film, and it's not groundbreaking effects, but it all works within the context of what they're trying to put together here.
Yeah, and it was a good mix between like the computer generated stuff and the actual costumes. Like this Krampus was a really great costume. It was pretty dynamic. It wasn't like, I didn't like the one as much from the Christmas one we saw last year with Krampus, where he was just like giant and hunched over and weird. I thought it was kind of cool, but I felt like this one was a little bit more dangerous, a little more interesting.
It's pretty awesome too that they got a guy who actually sort of looks like that and then just put the mask on him.
Yeah, he's like 6'7", like 280 pounds, just this giant dude. And then you just make him up and
Krampus
make
has
him look
abs
cool.
in this, you guys. Krampus be shredded. And there was a great story from the makeup department. This guy's so big, and Krampus is shirtless through a lot of this. So when he's on screen, they're doing the makeup. They're putting this sort of white, pale makeup on him to make this look like this sort of pale demon creature. And they had to go to like the Home Depot and buy a paint roller for the makeup to be able to put it on him quickly enough. He's just like slopping paint on this giant bodybuilder guy, which I love that image of him just sitting in the makeup chair, like, burp, burp, burp. All right, get it on there, put the mask on.
And they did it right with the big guy. Like, you don't want to give a guy like that a lot of lines. Usually, you just want him to be menacing and yelling and doing his thing. I also thought that the guy they got to play Santa, like, even though the elves and everything didn't quite work, and I had a few problems with the way his wife acted.
Yeah,
but it all makes sense.
It works out
in the end.
by the time you're done with the movie, but when you're watching it took me out a little bit too.
Yeah, but I did like the guy they actually got to play Santa in the like Braum classic style Santa, not the like Coca-Cola super nice Santa.
I was reading about from the directors, and there's 3 people who directed this together, which is actually pretty impressive considering they had like 22 days to shoot this. You get 3 people all on the same page, and even though they're sort of making different stories, to be all on the same page more or less tonally and visually is pretty cool. They got all that coordinated. But I read the director of that particular segment talking about how they wanted to have sort of a Viking warrior Santa, a Norse god version of Santa. And it's not just the guy they picked, and his facial hair is great and everything, but it's also the costume. They have a really great sort of warrior Santa costume going on, where it's still, he doesn't look like he's like in armor or anything, but he's got a lot of leather in there and a lot of straps, and it kind of feels more.
It's like the triple belt girdle and things like that. The staff that he's carrying, the cloak. Yeah, all of it just fits.
His belly doesn't jiggle because he's got it cinched up in that girdle. Going back to the Krampus too, one of the things that I thought was really great, even though they had an amazing looking special effect, they don't use it very much until like close to the end. You get sort of a Jaws-esque take on, okay, we'll show him, in the initial, you kind of just get a fleeting glimpse of him bursting across the screen as he causes this initial accident that sets off their journey into the woods, and he's stalking them. And there's a couple, he shows up like in just for a couple frames, as he's attacking them. When you get to the end of the movie, it's not like they're hiding him. It's not like they didn't have a good special effect and they had to shoot around it. But it does sort of make that section more effective and makes it kind of more awesome when he finally does show up.
Yeah,
and he
they
does
just
look
built
like he
the
does.
anticipation for it.
Yeah, and they had something to pay off that anticipation. It wasn't like, well, we don't have a working Krampus suit. I mean, maybe that is it. You know, maybe they couldn't afford to have him make up the whole time. But when you do finally get to see the showdown with the Krampus, that, you know, that felt gratifying. It felt like, oh, there is actually something to see here. Sometimes movies can go too far one way or the other. Sometimes you'll get we're just going to keep it in the shadows and never show you anything. And I think that can be, I mean, granted, it can be a good technique if you don't have the thing, but you want to see something. And yet, other times, you'll have people throw everything at you all at once, and that's not always the right technique either, and they have just a perfect balance here.
Yeah. I also really enjoyed having William Shatner as kind of the narrator for all this.
He's perfect. He's
like, I know they probably
this.
only had him in studio for like a day or two, but he added so much to this just by tone, by like, just being charismatic and interesting, and it really added to the Christmas spirit of the whole movie.
And he actually, you know, definitely went out to be an ambassador for this film too. I read several interviews with him, and I do want to bring this up because this was maybe the most fascinating thing I read, quote unquote, about this film. It's actually not about this film, but they were talking to him about this movie, and he mentioned that he had written a horror movie script at one point in his life that never got produced, still hasn't been produced, but that he's had this interest in horror. Did you read this interview, Tony?
I did not read this particular one.
It's sort of broad strokes and very, you know, it could turn out to suck, but it's about this guy. You know, he tells the story of this guy who's a veteran, right? And he's come back from the war and he's been a war hero, right? Like he's been sort of fearless in the face of danger. And after he comes back, at some point he has a near-death experience, and it's not a good near-death experience, where he sees like demons and creatures and things like waiting for him to die and come, you know, pull him into their clutches of hell, and how suddenly this guy who's been fearless and, you know, tough his whole life is overcome with this terror of death, and sort of seeing what, you know, thinking about what's on the other side. And I thought that concept sounds amazing. I don't know how you play it out. I don't know where it goes from there, but the way he pitched it, I was like, there's a version of that story that could be really cool.
Yeah, it could get very cerebral. It could get pretty intense. I could easily see that being a full feature-length movie. I'm surprised that somebody didn't contact him after that to just pick it up, maybe give it a script treatment or something.
Who knows? I mean, Hollywood wheels turn pretty slow. Like, for all we know, it's actually in development at the moment. But it is neat to see him doing things still, and him popping up in things. Also, wanted to give a shout out to Julian Gerhardt, who is suddenly becoming one of my favorite character actors. Never heard of this guy until, I think, last year when I watched Patchtown, and he was the villain in Patchtown. I was like, this guy is great. And then I started seeing him in so much stuff. He popped up in The Expanse for a little bit. He was in a movie called Ejecta, which I didn't really like that much. And now he plays a very small bit part. He's the uncle of the family that gets attacked by the Krampus. This guy
in this one, his character name was Gerhardt, right?
No, okay, Julian Richings. I said his name was. Clearly, I'm not a mega fan. I'm looking at IMDb right now. Julian Richings played Gerhardt, and he's just got such a striking face, and he's a good actor. Like, I mean, it's not just the face thing, but like he has. Once you see him in a movie, you're like, I know that guy. That guy. His face is like, he's got such a great sort of weirdly proportioned type visage that when you see him in a movie, you're like, I know that guy. That guy's awesome.
He's just going to pop a little bit more than usual for a background character.
Yeah, and he was a very background character. I mean, he might have been on set for 2 or 3 days. I mean, maybe longer. I don't know exactly what the details of this are, but they didn't have a long time to shoot this, and they are shooting 5 stories simultaneously. So you can see that, and that blows my mind too. You think that's just over 3 weeks to get this done, and these people really put together a good little movie in that amount of time. They have, we haven't talked much about the ghost story, but I felt like that had some really cool, effective scares, and the girl in that playing up the creepy and what the stuff that she does to those guys, it all worked for me.
It actually felt like teenagers trying to pull off like a little investigative reporting thing. Like, I bought into the story really well. Also,
and they didn't do found footage.
Yeah.
They could have. They were right there. They had their cameras on. They had like all of their sound equipment. They could have gone. We're like, well, we're just gonna have this section of the movie be found footage. Didn't do it. Thank you guys. Thank you for resisting that urge.
And the only part that is kind of found footage is actually really effective whenever she's first showing them what happened, like with the police investigation footage.
Right, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying you can't have bits of found footage in your movie, but they didn't we're going to make this the found footage side of things now.
Yeah. Well, it would have been just so far tonally off. I wonder if they even had that discussion. Like, they were like, well, this would be really easy to make like this. But I think it was just so much more effective. They were able to pull cooler angles. They were able to get kind of high in the room and show you everything that was happening. And it really built up for that. Like, the way she talked whenever she was sort of possessed, like, everything was just perfect about that sequence. And like you said earlier, you could probably make a full movie out of that, especially with them in the basement and the scares going on. But having about 15 total minutes of screen time, maybe 20 minutes, where you're just seeing like the giant weird nativity scene with like the paper mache camel, and
that was so creepy.
Yeah.
Every time, there are times when there's like a ghost in the background, like somebody's walking down a hallway and you'll see like a figure pop up and then it's gone after they pass in front of the camera or whatever. But then on top of that, you're in that room with all of those statue things for the full-size nativity set, and it anytime you have a statue in a scene like that, it's just messed up.
Yeah, you're just waiting and waiting for something to happen with the statues.
That didn't, unfortunately. I wanted that to happen.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to see like the possession happen of those, but it was still pretty ominous. By the way, this movie is available on Netflix if you guys want to check it out. It's definitely worth your time for... it's a little over 90 minutes, isn't it? It's not too long.
No, I think it's like an hour and 45.
Yes.
And I don't want to oversell this. Like, it's not the greatest thing ever. But having gone into this with almost negative expectations, because there have been so many of these horror anthologies that I've seen that are not good.
Yeah, you get like the ABCs of Murder and some of these other ones where you'll get like a good sequence, but you don't get a full-on like awesome anthology.
And this one, it worked on the individual level, and I'm not going to spoil it, but the way everything ties together at the end, I was bouncing up. I was like, I was not expecting that. Again, going in with such low expectations and having every single one of them erased, even the things that in the movie as I was watching, I thought, I don't like this. And then the way they resolved it just made me so happy that I wasn't watching VHS 3 Christmas special.
And the thing about that was they kept dropping hints towards what was happening at the ending, and I was trying to figure out how they were going to resolve it and if we would get any sort of resolution there. And they definitely resolved it well. Like, they stuck the landing.
Yeah, there was that. He keeps making references to things that you're like, what's going on here? And then you cut to something. I don't want to go in depth with too much, but I kind of wondered, like, how is this going to fit in? How is this event that the radio host is referencing here going to fit in with all of these other stories? It doesn't really make any, is there going to be like a sixth story that comes in somehow? And the tie-up was just wonderful. Wonderful.
Do you regret that we didn't watch this while we were at the film festival?
Did they have this at the film festival?
Yep. It was one of the late night showing ones. I remember looking at it, and it was just a picture of William Shatner. I was like, that looks kind of interesting. But it was also like another 11 o'clock showing after we'd watched like 6 movies in a day.
I don't know. Like, I was happy watching it on Netflix in my bedroom, like on my laptop. It didn't. Maybe it would have been more special in the festival atmosphere, but I having waited, still enjoyed it. I don't know that.
It's not one that really needs the big screen to really show off everything. Like, it's just tight storytelling put into this, and it's just well edited, well composed. I don't know. I keep thinking back to like the Changeling one.
That was so, and the effect there as well. Again, you have a great like physical effect when you finally do see what the Changeling actually is, and it's really effective. I almost think that I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much at a festival, because maybe your sort of expectations are higher, but also because I'm not a night person, and so like at 11 o'clock I would have been sort of, all right, show me what you got, movie. So being able to watch this at my leisure, in my time, sort of, especially because I was sick this last week, so it kind of tided me through my sickness. I'm still, by the way, voice is a little raspy, sorry guys. But with it almost, I think, was more enjoyable there.
Did you get to watch this in one sitting? I know a lot of times you have to break it up in like 3 or 4.
I mean, I think I like moved to a different room to continue watching it. So, I mean, I technically didn't watch it in one sitting, but it was sort of all in the same chunk of time. I started watching it on my lunch break with my wife, just thinking, I'll watch a little something. And then something went wrong with something I was going to work on that afternoon. So I thought, well, I guess I'll just keep watching the podcast movie. And so I sat down right after lunch and continued watching it on my laptop. And it didn't, I don't think that this is a movie that would be hurt too much by that kind of broken up viewing either. It's not like there's these giant plot points you have to remember from, who is this character from the beginning? The only one that, and this almost like took me by surprise when I realized, and it may have been obvious earlier in the movie and I'm just dumb and didn't notice, but it wasn't until about halfway through the film that I realized that the black police officer from the footage at the beginning was the father of the child in the creepy child story.
Yeah, I picked up on that a little earlier than you did, and I actually really liked that touch. It added to why he would be in kind of a traumatic spot whenever he's talking to his kid, why he missed out on the last Christmas, why he's trying to make up for it.
Oh, yeah. And for me, it was cool because I heard them talking about like all this stuff about, it's, last Christmas. I know I've been off. I know I haven't been here for you, but I'm gonna be back. And I didn't understand what that was in reference to right away. And then once I did understand, I thought like, that's so cool. He was the guy who got messed up in that video.
For such a broad cast, they actually do put a lot of little nice strokes on a lot of the different characters. Some of it's a little bit ham-handed, like parts of the Krampus story with the young boy. Like, it felt like that was a little bit kind of like after the fact type stuff, but it didn't bother me any. Like, I felt like they did a good enough job developing a lot of these characters for the very, very limited time they had.
Well, yeah, I think that in particular was helped by the actress's delivery of that particular revelation. And there was something really special about that kind of confession scene in the church about these people being hunted down in a lot of stress and sort of breaking down to their most basic selves and saying, hey, I've been lying to you. This is actually who I am. And I liked a lot of that. I don't know that it was perfect, but I thought that that whole thing worked really well. And I like the ending of that. I won't spoil it, but the way that they finished that off and kind of brought things around to the beginning, again, it worked for me.
Definitely worked for me as well. I'm trying to think if there's anything more to say about this film without getting into spoiler territory.
I did want to ask you, I've been told, and this isn't something I've seen, but I've been told this is very similar to a movie called Trick or Treat. Have you seen that movie, Tony?
I have not. I've always been interested in the poster for it. I remember walking by it a ton, like at the video store when I was a kid, but I never saw Trick or Treat.
My friend Brantley, I was texting him as I was watching this, especially saying like, oh, look how they're all woven together. And apparently Trick or Treat does the same thing, where it's anthology films, but they're all sort of a piece. So we may have to talk about that going forward. Maybe next year for Halloween, Tony.
That sounds like a good plan to me. Like, if we can find more anthologies that are put together this well, I would very, very much like to do that.
It's tough, man. It's got to be, it's the writing more than anything. These people sat down and took the time. They wrote out what they wanted to do, and figured out a way to intermesh all these stories really well. And I think that putting the time in to the pre-production, and not just slapping something together, not just saying, well, we've got what, you want to make a thing in my movie? Come on, which is okay. I mean, I'm not trying to diss that. There's opportunity there especially for up and coming directors, but you talked about the festival circuit earlier, and one of the directors I read talked about how that when you watch a short film compilation, like not an anthology thing, just sort of like you're at the festival and you're like got a bunch of short films coming in, there's a certain point where just sort of the monotony of, and here's the next story, and here's the next story, and here's the next story, even if they're kind of good, sort of wears you down. You get a little bit weary of it, and by doing this you don't have that same kind of fatigue of, it sounds sort of like it wouldn't be that way. It sounds like it'd be the opposite. It's like, well, you gotta wait for all these things to play out individually, but somehow weaving these things together makes them feel a lot more fresh, I think, than they would be individually on their own. If you took all these stories and broke them apart and just had them play, here's a story, here's a story, here's a story, I legitimately think it would not work as well and be as good. But combining them all together like this, the strength of the whole is greater than the strength of the parts.
Yeah.
And it was, props to these guys for putting together this cute little low budget Canadian horror film that delivers on a lot of fronts.
Were you able to find any information on how they were able to keep such similar visual styles? Like, do you know if it was just a lot of storyboarding, a lot of pre-production? Like, were they involved on the set with some of the other people? Like, I was wondering how can you keep it so consistent? The only thing that really changed from scene to scene was a little bit of the color work.
I don't think it's that hard. I think that if you, and I'm not an expert in shooting anything, but if you're using similar equipment, if you're sort of on the same page, you don't have somebody who's, again, going to go off and do like, a found footage style or something. The styles of this can vary somewhat, and especially when you're in a different type of story, you want the styles to vary a little bit. I think that the camera work in the ghost story was different from the camera work in the Santa story, and various other types of flourishes that you will get from different types of stories. But I don't think it's that difficult. Again, especially if you're starting from, we're all working together, we all have sort of similar equipment, they're probably all edited together, so it's, I think, easier to do that than you would think.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about
it's
the
not
Marvel
like they
universe,
had some guy that thought he was Francis Ford Coppola trying to get everything absolutely perfect and taking 40 takes for everything.
Well, that guy wouldn't have been able to make the movie in 22 days. But I've heard this example about the Marvel universe too, where you have all of these various different characters and different directors that are coming in from, I mean, look at they have comedy directors doing a lot of stuff for them now, but they manage to, they have sort of their style that they go for, and there may be some variation depending on, Doctor Strange is going to be a little bit weirder, but generally there's a Marvel look, there's the Marvel way, and it's not like you suddenly get some weird out of left field, like, what is this? All the Marvel movies feel like they're in the same universe, even if they're different directors and different tones. So I think that
they even started with comedy in the Marvel universe, though. Like, they started with Jon Favreau doing Iron Man, and he's always been kind of comedic, kind of like snappy dialogue, that sort of guy, and it just ended up working well, and he was able to put the action sequences together on top of having that dialogue.
Yeah. And now every Marvel movie is like that.
Yep.
Everything's snappy, comedic. There's maybe a little bit less in Captain America, but it's still like they're all going for that same tone. It still keeps working for them. I can't say that don't get a little bit tired of the same thing over and over again, but it seems to be making them a lot of money. It's not breaking down for them yet.
And I think it works better in some movies than others. Like, I love the way Ant-Man was put together more than some of the other ones.
True, and Ant-Man is a very different... that style goes more towards the humor than the action. You know, again, for sort of like on a sliding scale between, I would say, Captain America, like the Winter Soldier's on one end, maybe Civil War also on that end, and then Ant-Man is on the other end. I'm trying to think of what else to be over by Ant-Man.
Spider-Man looks like it's going to be on the far end, like the more comedic end, anyway.
Maybe okay. Should we roll into trailer talk?
I think so. I think we've tapped out on what we can do for a Christmas horror story.
It's good. I recommend, by the way. Everybody should check it out. Sorry, go ahead.
I was saying I very much recommend it as well. And we're kind of rolling into trailer talk from the sounds of it.
Yes, because Tony brought up Spider-Man. Tell me I'm not the only one who got a Napoleon Dynamite vibe from this trailer.
There's a little bit of one. It's definitely different from the rest of the Marvel movies. It seems like it's just a little bit brighter, a little bit, I won't say off, but it's definitely a different feel. Maybe it's the music that they picked to go with it. Maybe it's because like 18 or probably like 16-year-old Peter Parker seems to be a lot different from the other superheroes as far as just the sort of life he's living. It just seems to be a different type of movie in this one.
I could see that. I mean, they're talking about wanting to make it sort of like a coming-of-age John Hughes style not kids movie, but like that sort of high school drama style movie, and also then you have the Vulture in there, and it really seems like there's a lot of stuff that's throwbacks. They have the wings on the spider suit now, which we've seen in the trailer.
Yep.
From the
gliding sort of suit that he has.
Yeah, that, by the way, that I don't want to ruin. Nobody cares, but there's no way. Like, that's not nearly enough surface area to hold anybody up. Unless his bones, like, did he get spider bones too? They're all like hollow, like birds' bones.
I hate to break it to you, Al, but spiders don't have bones.
Well, see, are you saying Spider-Man doesn't have bones, Tony?
I'm saying he's got a carapace. He could
turn into a blob.
He's got a carapace, and all of his like limbs move like spiders, where it's basically like hard-on style, like penis fluid.
Nope.
That's how spiders walk, by the way. That's why they curl up into little, like, tiny balls whenever they're dead.
Oh, no, that's true. But you could have, like, said hydraulics or something, Tony. It doesn't have to be sexual.
Just imagine when a spider's running at you, especially one the size of, like, a Doberman. It's just all penis-style flopping. That sound like... Yeah. That's how Spider-Man moves.
You're talking about measuring a spider's speed in erections per second?
Yes.
Is that what we're saying?
And like the pitter-patter of it, too.
No. No penis spiders. Why?
I'm sure Joe's going to love this part of the podcast.
Uh-huh. I'm taking a drink of coffee now because I can't take it.
I still think it's funny also that Michael Keaton went from Birdman to being Vulture. Like, it just feels so fitting.
It feels like a joke. It feels like somebody was like, you know who we should get to be the Vulture? Michael Keaton. And everybody's like, ha 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 ha. That's a funny joke. And then they were like, actually, all right, yeah. Let's see how much he wants.
And the thing is, Michael Keaton's badass. He's one of my favorite actors from like late 80s, early 90s. Like, he did a lot of awesome movies. Like, you see Beetlejuice and he's in it for 14 minutes, and yet every single scene that with him is memorable. Like, he's an awesome actor. Like, I know you didn't like Birdman quite as much as I did, but like, he wasn't the problem with that movie.
It wasn't a Michael Keaton issue. I just felt like that. I don't know what I don't think the movie really knew what it wanted to be about. It's like, aging sucks and young people are stupid and superheroes are stupid, but superheroes affect our lives. I'm not going to get into a Birdman conversation. It just Yes,
No
definitely
Inorachi
not Michael
today.
Keaton that I didn't like in the movie.
So I think it looks like it's going to be a solid entry into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I like that they're bringing Tony Stark into it, although I'm kind of surprised that they just keep throwing all that cash at Robert Downey Jr. and he keeps being like, I'm not going to do this anymore. And yet he keeps showing up.
I think that they keep throwing cash at him because the audiences keep throwing cash at the screen when he's in it. And he's plus I don't think he's going to be a major part of this. That was one of the most interesting pieces of this trailer to me is, Robert Downey Jr. says, Iron Man says to Spider-Man, hey, don't get involved here. Somebody will take care of this. I don't know why somebody doesn't take care of it. It does kind of raise the question, why does Spider-Man have to deal with the Vulture? I mean, Tony Stark obviously knows about the Vulture. Spider-Man tells him about the Vulture. He says, don't deal with the Vulture. That's somebody else's problem. I kind of agree, Tony Stark. Where's the somebody else? Why aren't you taking down the Joker?
The Joker?
Not the Joker. Yes. Why aren't you taking down the Joker, Tony Stark?
I mean, I feel like Tony Stark probably could take down the Joker.
Tony Stark doesn't have a rule about killing, does he?
No?
Just shoot him.
Like, he kind of discreetly kills a lot of people. So does his company. It's kind of like how Captain America doesn't really have a problem with killing.
Well, he's a soldier.
Yeah, that was one of the things I thought was always funny about, like, the original Captain America movie. It's like the only time I could remember a Marvel character just straight up gunning down people in the street with a 1911.
That's his thing, man. I want more of that. I honestly want like less wishy-washy.
It's easy to do that when you're killing
gritty.
Nazis, though.
Do what?
It's easier to do that when you're killing Nazis. You don't have to have the internal conflict.
But I like it when I don't need every superhero to have that rule. It's fine for some superheroes. Okay, I'll make fun of Batman for it, but I do like it when there's some variation there, and like especially Deadpool. Somebody like the Hulk, right? Like if Bruce Banner, it's somewhere like in the back of the Hulk's mind is always saying, pull back, pull back, pull back, don't kill people. I don't, we've been through this before, but I don't, like, they don't actually show anybody actually dying from anything the Hulk does. It would be interesting if sort of there was some kind of, like, moral compass inside of him, like, just barely pulling his punches to the point where people don't actually get killed. But they don't actually ever delve into that in the movies. It's just sort of like, here's a city that got wrecked pretty bad. We don't actually see anybody with their head chopped off or something from a skyscraper falling on them. But
yeah, I just want to see Hulk once just grab somebody and like just pile drive them into the pavement.
Ugh.
Just like just straight up like turn them upside down, head first, right into the pavement, and then just jump off like nothing happened. In the comics, we get to see him literally rip Wolverine in half and throw his body across frozen tundra. Is frozen tundra the name of another hero, or is that the terrain that they're fighting on? That was the terrain they're fighting on. It was just like up in the mountains, there was snow. I can't remember exactly where they were. All I know is that Wolverine had to crawl to his bottom half and then like just use his healing factor. I feel like that if there isn't, there should be a hero or villain called Frozen Tundra. What would his power be? Freezing, ice, Also, like the ability to make plants not grow that well. Yeah, like a bunch of dwarf plants. Yeah, he kills trees. I still like Frozone better. The next trailer we have to talk about is in a very different vein than the Spider-Man one. Well, we're talking about The Wall, starring John Cena and that guy who was in Godzilla. Aaron Taylor Johnson? Yeah. Yes. That's the name. Who, by the way, I just really want it. I don't know what their ages are, so I don't want this to be creepy, but based on names alone, I want Aaron Taylor Johnson to date Anya Taylor-Joy for like 5 minutes. Because that, get like, those the initials weirdness up there. Aaron Taylor Johnson's a lot older than he seems, like it, because you see him in the Kick-Ass movies and he actually legit looks like a teenager, maybe early 20s. And then you see him like at a Comic-Con panel and he's got like gray hair and everything. Does he have gray hair? It might have been some remnants from whenever he was Quicksilver. Okay. That seems... he doesn't seem that old. I'm not going to go Google Aaron Taylor Johnson age because that's weird. He's in his 30s. I understand. But this The Wall trailer,
kind of came out of nowhere. It's from director of the Edge of Tomorrow, Doug Liman. It's a very small, sort of phone booth-esque kind of movie with John Cena and Aaron Taylor Johnson playing sniper and spotter respectively. They sort of Comic-Con. They come upon this sort of bombed out vehicle that's right next to this brick wall, and not bombed out, but like a hit and run type of a situation. They spy it. You see them kind of at the beginning of the trailer scoping it out. It seems like everybody's gone. So John Cena goes down there to check it out and gets hit, not killed, but shot by a sniper from somewhere else. And Aaron Taylor Johnson runs down there to kind of help his buddy out, ends up scrambling to get behind this like low stone wall, and the sniper just has them pinned down for what seems like it's going to be most of the movie. If you like single location type stories, I think this one could be great. It might not be. I mean, trailers and everything, but it's very exciting to see this type of film come up. It's a Amazon original, I believe. The Amazon Studios funding it.
I did not know that part of it. Like, I got to watch the trailer and it just looked absolutely intense.
And John Cena, by the way, surprisingly not a terrible actor at this point in his life.
They always start out these wrestling guys with kind of comedic roles and like slowly roll them into other things. The Rock is still doing mostly like action roles and everything. But you've got Batista doing Guardians of the Galaxy, which is the silly role, and then you had him in, I believe he was in Spectre, wasn't he?
Yeah, he didn't have many lines in that.
I feel like if you really pressed him, you could get a pretty decent performance out of him. But you can totally see John Cena as a soldier. Like, he's just the big, brawny guy. I'm wondering if he's going to end up thinning out a little bit, kind of like Arnold Schwarzenegger did. Because it's really hard whenever you're the biggest dude in the world to get all the roles. But, like, for something like this, he actually looked like he had some decent acting chops. He looked like he was into the role. Like, you could buy him as a soldier.
Well, and you think about it, too. I think he started acting in The Marine, which was like 10 years ago. And I'm not saying anybody needs to rush out and buy that movie. I haven't seen it personally. But I think that he's probably, if this is any indication, he's been working to get better. He starts out in a sort of dumb action schlock thing that those people are just going to come and see him because his name is plastered all over the front of it. Then moves into comedy, kind of hones things there, and now you see him actually turning in what seems like a good performance. Granted, he's sort of laying on the ground for most of the movie. I don't know if that makes it easier or harder, but it definitely it was not bad.
Yeah.
Aaron Taylor Johnson and him seemed like they're bouncing off of each other pretty well. And Aaron Taylor Johnson is not always my favorite actor, but when he gets the right role, I think he can really deliver, and this seems like it's going to be pretty amazing, intense.
He's almost unrecognizable in this role, too. Like, despite having been a soldier in Godzilla, this doesn't look like him, sound like him. It's like he's definitely immersed in that character. I'm wondering who the sniper's going to be.
It seems like he's going to be a voice for most of the movie.
It's kind of like Colin Farrell in, what was it, Phone Booth?
Phone Booth, yes.
Yeah. Which was a much more interesting movie than I thought it was going to be.
It's definitely in that vein, sort of Phone Booth, but in the middle of the desert. Which one of the interesting things about Phone Booth is all the other people sort of walking by and kind of the fact that it's taking place in the middle of this bustling city. But this definitely has its own spin and twist on that. And you mentioned not recognizing Aaron Taylor Johnson. Maybe I'm just my face blindness, but it didn't feel like they were really putting John Cena's face out there to be like, here's John Cena, you guys.
Well, if you put a little bit too much John Cena face out there, you start getting the meme John Cena, not the actor John Cena.
Yeah, and you're talking about the bulk. I think one of the things that's good about this is he's in full like camo kitted outfit, so it's not like you're seeing the giant bulging muscles. You can kind of hide some of that under the ghillie suit that he's wearing.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem that out of place.
He was probably the best part of the movie Trainwreck with Amy Schumer.
I've heard so many good things about that movie, but I haven't seen it.
There were some good things. There were some terrible things. I don't know. LeBron James was really funny in that, but he's in probably John Cena's in the first 15, 20 minutes of it a fair amount. And every time he's on there, I was laughing. Like, he just did a really good job there.
What do you think? This is going to be a little. We'll get back to trailer talk in just a second. But see, you brought up Amy Schumer in Trainwreck. What do you think of the news that they have dropped that Amy Schumer is going to be Barbie in the Barbie movie?
I don't know. That just doesn't seem like her type of thing. Like, I mean, I'm sure they put the dollar signs in front of her and everything, but she's also not like the slim Barbie figure. Like, and she talks about that ad nauseum in her specials.
I think that that's supposed to be. So I've read the plot synopsis, and the idea is that the movie is about her not sort of conforming to the ideals of the Barbie society. In other words,
I'm just going to say this right now, that this sounds like a terrible movie that I will not be watching.
No?
No, I don't want to see a Barbie movie.
Well, okay, yes, I understand that you don't want to see a Barbie movie, but this take on Barbie, if you're gonna make a Barbie movie, actually addressing the whole body image thing, and women can, might not actually look like the Barbie dolls that they're playing with, maybe that's a thing that we should talk about. That it could be incredible. Like, this is one of those films where you can easily see both possibilities of the really bad version of the movie that's just sort of ham-handed and annoying, and then like the good version of the movie that's sort of like, hey, Lego movie and positive and actually hits all those cylinders. I don't know which one that's going to be, but in my mind, the good version of this movie could be pretty cool.
I'll wait for the trailer to drop. Right now, I'm very, very skeptical of the idea of it being a good movie, but I thought the Lego movie sounded dumb until I saw the trailer, so
it's being written by Diablo Cody as well, which I've heard some good things about her. I know that not every single movie of hers has been sort of everybody's favorite thing, but I think she's got some interesting ideas about it, so we'll have to wait and see. It's interesting that Mattel is even willing to go in this direction, to hire somebody kind of subversive like Diablo Cody, and then to hire Amy Schumer as the lead character and sort of embrace this idea of getting away from the perfect sort of image of Barbie and subverting their own thing a little bit. I don't know what the end product is going to be, but the fact that this sort of licensed product is going in this somewhat subversive direction, again, gives me shades of the Lego movie, and at least makes me happy that these people aren't so stuck on themselves that they're not willing to take a risk.
Yeah, because I would expect somebody like Mattel to just make some like 3D animated Barbie movie. They go straight to DVD. They've done that a dozen times. So maybe they're actually looking to try to make something out of the property.
So I it could be good. It could suck, Tony. I'm just saying there's some interesting ideas there. Getting back to trailer talk, the most important trailer that dropped this week, and the best, in my opinion, was the long-awaited Fast and Furious 8 trailer, or as they have revealed to us, the title of this movie actually is Fate of the Furious. Now, I want to warn everybody, here's your chance not to be shocked, okay? I want you to put your not shocked face on, not like, oh, I didn't think about that, if you didn't think about this yet, because apparently some people haven't yet. You ready? Are you prepared? Okay, good. Fate of the Furious, it's like F8. F8. Now, so you didn't act shocked. You can say to your friends, oh, yeah, you guys didn't get that? I got that. Because some people in my life didn't get that ahead of time. And I want to provide this service to you from us at the Human Echoes podcast, so you can sound not dumb and smart. How do you feel? Let's start off with the title, Tony. How do you feel about this title?
I feel like it's a little bit of a stretch.
Well, I mean, that's kind of appropriate for the series.
I haven't seen a Fast and the Furious movie since the first one, whenever I saw it in theaters. So I am so far behind on this. I watched the trailer and I was like, what is this at all even? Like, what is this supposed to be? Like, it looked like some, like, alternate history version of Triple X.
Eventually, I'm sure they will do a crossover with Triple X and Riddick. With Vin Diesel, triple vision Vin Diesel. Think about that.
The thing is, I liked Pitch Black. I kind of liked some aspects of Riddick too. Like,
okay,
that's
you don't like. You don't like this, though, I take it.
I just didn't like the way this looked. The storyline didn't make any sense. Is Charlize there and like literally pulling a mind control device out of her ass? Like, what's going on?
Okay, so this is an interesting. So the trailer shows, and I thought this was a great twist, by the way, because obviously it's soap opera stuff. It's wonderful soap opera stuff. It always is with Fast and Furious. Okay, you're watching a soap opera with cars, and it is. I mean, it's like got people with amnesia and people coming back from the dead, and I mean that was both of those were Letty, but still, you have big villains and sort of these sort of weird, larger than life story arcs, and to wonder like, okay, where are they going now? And see them go here where like they have to fight off Dom. I like that idea a lot. I do have that same question that you had of, okay, so they're fighting off Dom. Why? Is it a mind control? Is not my favorite answer to this question. It's an answer I will accept. I will be like, I won't riot and leave the theater if it's mind control, because that's within the realm of possibility of these big stupid movies. But there was that one shot in the trailer where she says you're going to turn on your team, and like it shows him holding up the picture of Paul Walker and his family. I think that it's possible she's just like, she's got them held hostage somehow, and she's using them to blackmail Vin Diesel into working against his team.
It's probably something like that, or he's like trying to infiltrate their organization to blah 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 blah, and he knows that they can take it, so he's just gonna press it as far as he has to do whatever he has to for convoluted plot reasons and give us more money.
Well, there is also the possibility that it's all part of the plan, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is like he could be doing this for a good long while because they'll like, oh, I'm not really gonna kill Dwayne Johnson. Nothing can kill Dwayne Johnson.
I'm sure I've heard that like half of the actors in this cast have it in their contracts now for these movies that they cannot lose a fight. Like they had like it started with Vin Diesel, and this is unconfirmed. Okay, I've heard this from what I would say some relatively reliable sources, but I wasn't on set. I'm not there. I'm not the lawyer who's negotiating these things, so maybe take this with a little bit of a grain of salt. But I heard that in one of the Fast and the Furious movie where The Rock and Vin Diesel have to fight, like Vin Diesel got mad because The Rock was supposed to beat him, and he says, listen, you guys need to come up with a different way for this to go, because I'm not going to get beat in my own movie. And apparently The Rock, like they figured out a way for them to kind of fight to a draw and sort of both run off and be okay. And at that point, like it started to spread out into the cast where people, I don't want to get beat either. I'm awesome like Vin Diesel. And so they have to keep introducing people into the crew to have them get beat. My biggest problem with this trailer was the introduction of Jason Statham into the team, where they break him out and they're like, you're working with us now. Because Jason Statham killed Han Solo. Okay. You don't get to come back from killing Han Solo and be on the team now. That's not okay.
I don't know what you mean by killing Han Solo, because I don't know who was in this series before that you would consider Han Solo.
No, the guy's name is literally Han Solo.
Okay. They
have a character in the Fast and the Furious movies whose name is Han, and he's Korean, and his last name is how does it spelled? I'm gonna look it up now.
This is all very confusing to me. This whole mythos and like 8 movie thing. Like I just don't know where to start with it. You
need to start with Fast and Furious.
Oh, I saw that.
Tokyo.
But
what?
I saw that, but it just seems like it's so disjointed.
Not the Fast and the Furious. Fast and Furious.
Which is the 5th movie?
4th.
Okay.
You can also start with Fast 5 if you want to. But Fast and Furious is kind of where the whole mythos starts out.
The soft reboot or whatever?
Yes. It doesn't have his Han Solo. Like his name is Han, and then SEOUL-O. He's an Asian dude. So Han Solo.
Just going Korean with it.
Yeah, he is Korean, I believe. They ended up killing him in Japan. Spoilers for like 8 movies ago in this series, but He ends up getting killed in Japan at one point, and then they brought him back. Like everything at that point was a prequel to that, and then leading up to him getting killed. It was very weird. It was very weird.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that, how just the timelines are a little screwy nowadays.
But the fact he's a great character is what I'm saying, and it was awesome that they brought him back to do this sort of prequel thing, just because he was so much of the soul of the series, and Jason Statham being the guy to kill him is you can't have Jason Statham now be a bad guy. I'll still watch the movies, okay, I will, but that's not okay. You don't get to do that. Jason Statham is the bad guy here. He's bad.
Oh, it
He's
looks
not
like
good.
they're having to team up with him for a little bit, like, and then he'll become the bad guy again.
Or I would accept him working for them if they then throw him back in jail at the end of the movie, I guess.
Or if he escapes to be the bad guy for, like, Fast 9, whatever, like, weird acronym they get on that.
I do also want to bring up yet a third option for the evil Dom thing, and that is an evil twin. Because
it kind
again,
of seems like they were hinting at that. Just like, but how would they get him to be like, I give up. I just give
or
up.
Or a clone. A clone, Tony.
Charlize Theron is cloning him. That is Charlize Theron, right?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
With dreads.
And I think that's what was throwing me off. I was like, I have a hard time seeing her with dreads.
But it all feels like it's on point for what I've seen in the series so far. The action, the wonderful, ridiculous action that they do, you know, the sort of big, weird plot twist that they have, it all feels of a piece, and this feels like the natural next step for these guys. Not like, I know everybody sort of joked about, these guys, they're in space now, but there are plenty of other action things to do, and seeing that set piece with the submarine, just mind-blowing. Yeah, really great stuff.
For a second, I thought it was a monster bursting from the surface, or from below the surface. I was like, okay, this movie has officially jumped the shark. I have no idea what's going on, but they put kaiju in here.
The mega shark.
And then I was like, no, it's a submarine.
I don't think submarines surface like that, but I wish that they did.
I'm sure they probably do in like normal circumstances, but I don't know if they're going to be bursting through ice thick enough to support cars like that.
Okay. Well, you know what? We're getting into like asking how much sense this makes, and the answer is none, and stop that right now.
Yeah. It's like you don't watch those movies because they make sense. You watch them because, you know, Vin Diesel. I watched the first movie that he was ever in this week.
Oh, which one is that?
Saving Private Ryan.
Oh, is that his first?
Yep.
It's weird seeing him come out of nowhere in that, and you're like, I recognize that guy, and he's not supposed to be somebody that you would, like, he's not playing a part of somebody that you would supposed to be recognizing, but he went on to be pretty big, as it turned out.
There were a lot more bigger actors in that than I remember. Like, you just see, like, Paul Giamatti and all these other people, like, just running around that movie.
We're coming to the end of our time here, but I did, before we wrap up, want to mention that at the time that this podcast comes out, Rogue One, a Star Wars story, speaking of dumb titles, but the Star Wars story part, not the Rogue One, will be out in theaters. We'll know if it sucks or not. It'll be getting reviewed on Rotten Tomatoes. We are reviewing on Tuesday before the embargo drops, so we don't know exactly what people thought, but the reactions seem to be really positive from the Twitter stuff that came at the premiere. Are you excited for this, Tony?
I am super stoked. Like, I'm probably more excited about this one than I am episode 8. I don't know why. It's more Death Star stuff, but I just really want to see this one. I feel like maybe it's because I'm a huge fan of Mads Mikkelsen. Maybe it's because I like the way this the new girl looks. Maybe it's because I like Donnie Yen. But it's just going to be like, it feels like it's going to be a really fun story. It feels like it's going to be a little bit more comprehensible than episode 7 as well.
It's so hard to read these initial reaction tweets, because I know that everybody was super positive about episode 7 coming out of the premiere, and then I don't know that anybody hates that movie. I don't hate that movie, but I think that there were eventually a little bit more of like, well, this is kind of a problem in that, and
yeah. Well, like the thing was, they fed everybody's member berries. They were just like, "Oh, remember this, remember this, remember this," and like it just hit so many nostalgic chords that it got people to ignore the plot points for a while, and I'm even guilty of that. But I still enjoy the movie, and I've watched it a second time now, and I still liked it. It just didn't quite hit as well as it did that first time, where it's like, "Oh my god, it's salvation for the prequels."
But putting that aside, it is still very exciting to see people getting excited for that. I saw someone mentioning on Twitter, first of all, Kevin Smith is like, this is Empire Strikes Back good, which, I mean, that's, again, if you're half right, that's still a pretty good film. Somebody saying that, probably the most interesting tweet that I saw related to this, that they wished there was an audience reaction cam in the theater so that they could, like, when certain things happened in the film, they could see people like freak out. And that sounds great to me.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. That, like, it's kind of showing that things probably don't go that well for certain people. I would really like to see that, though, and I'm going to be watching the audience reaction there. Speaking of Kevin Smith, I can go see him tonight if I want to. He's in my town, and I'm just debating on if I want to spend the $30 to go do that.
You're going to spend $30 to go hear Kevin Smith ramble on? Like, he's not going to tell jokes. He's just going to talk for like 3 hours.
Yeah, it's Jay and Silent Bob Get Old, so I could go download the podcast for free, like, next week if I wanted to, or I can go pay $30 to go see him.
But
because he's going to be less than a mile from my house, so it's kind of tempting.
But it's weird being on this side of things, you know, of sort of anticipating and like trying to gauge, okay, what's it really going to be like? It's a little, I think about that sometimes where, you know, I can go back in my head and be like, I remember when I thought this was going to be good, or I remembered when I didn't know about this, and like how time sort of unfolds in front of you. And I mean, granted, yes, I understand. I'm just describing the passage of time. Everybody understands how time passes, but it's a little bit exciting to be on this side of it where the possibilities are endless, and where even if it doesn't end up being great right now, it could be the best thing, and I can be excited about it. And I got to get a ticket. I need to get a ticket before they're all gone, Tony.
My friend's brother-in-law rented out the whole theater again, so I get to go do that.
Well, I'll go be at his place then. I'll fly out there.
Just come out to Longmont.
I think that'll about do it for us this week. Thanks, guys, so much for watching. If you enjoyed the podcast and you want to hear more stuff like that, maybe funnier stuff, you should go to humanechoes.com and click on the Become a Member link at the top bar. That will, if you support us at a level of $2 to $20 a month, you can get access to awesome stuff like the bonus podcast where me, Tony, and Joe sit down and talk about really some random crap, but a lot of fun random crap. And
you also get to suggest the random crap that we talk about.
You can if you become a member at humanechoes.com. There's also, depending on which level you're at, there's a t-shirt level where when you sign up, you get a free t-shirt. That's pretty cool. There's a pin level where you get pins sent out to you. It's a lot of great stuff, and you help support the podcast that you're listening to right now. The other way that you can help support us is by going to that same website, humanechoes.com, and clicking on any of our Amazon links. And once you're through there, just do whatever Christmas shopping you were already going to do. Buy office supplies, buy movies, buy whatever, and that won't cost you anything extra, but it gives us just a little cut of that to help keep us rolling forward.
Yep, and people have bought bikes, they've bought their college books. There's just anything that's on Amazon, we get like a 6 to 8% cut of. Some things, if it's like an Amazon product, like their USB cables or anything, we get even higher than that. It's a great way to support us without spending any extra money. It just throws us that little cutback. Even if you have ad block turned on, we have a link up on the top bar that just says Amazon. You can click that and it will take you there instantly.
And next week, we will be covering a movie called Christmas Evil from 1980, I believe.
We kind of looked through a lot of different Christmas horror movies, just seeing what was out there. And this one kind of piqued our interest as a slasher type. Yes. I don't know a lot about it. I've seen some stills, so we'll see how this one turns out. Follow us over on Twitter at HE Podcast. I'm also at TSouthcott, SOUTHCOTTE. And Al is at Albert_Berg over on the Twitters.
Berg is like an iceberg. Like what killed the Titanic.
Not like a berg, like a Pittsburgh.
Yeah, or like a flying thing. That's it. It's a G at the end, you guys. Anyway,
BERG.
we'll see you guys next week. Have a good one.
Have an awesome one. Bye.